Hello and welcome to my addendum to the review of Nikon Z 50mm f1.8 lens. In this short video, I will show you how the optics perform, the flare, the focus breathing, the sharpness of the corners and the behavior of the lens in the different apertures. So let's begin. In this section overview, we will look at performance of lens in the center in typical portrait situation with the side lighting to enhance the contrast, shadows, and to have more understanding of how it performs, because soft lighting will produce less shadows and it will be harder to determine if the lens is sharp or how the sharpness differs at different apertures. So here we have 6 images. They are taken at different apertures from 1.8 till f16, and all of them are using autofocus, eye detection, and using the tripod, so maximum stability and minimum input of external motion blur. I will scroll through them first and then show side-by-side differences. So from this preview, what we can see is not the actual difference in sharpness in the center, but more of how the depth of field changes with the change of the aperture. So at 1.8, at distance around 1.5 meters or so from the subject, with this point of view, we have very good background separation, because I'm sitting almost back to back with the wall behind me. The distance from the focal plane to the window glass behind me is 20 inches or 50 centimeters, or maybe even less. It's quite good at producing background blur even at 1.8. aperture. This is to the point if you're considering buying 1.2 for even smoother backgrounds. At 2.8 background is still blurry, but it is not as smooth, so it is like the comparison of the benefit of 1.8 aperture to the 2.8 zooms. F4 the background is still blurry, but not so much as to see the separation. And that's how it should look if you're using f4 zoom to capture a similar point of view. At f8, the background is almost in focus. At f11, I don't see much of improvements in the context of depth of the field. And at f16, the focus of the background is almost the same as the focus of the main subject, my face. As you can see, it doesn't provide much blur and separation. So now we'll put them side by side from 1.8 to f16. I'll put the 100 zoom at my eye and brow. The biggest takeaway, 24 megapixel Nikon Z6. The diffraction is not that much of an issue even at f16, but what is the issue is the graininess of the high ISOs. So they make pointless the comparison of optical performance of the lens. But basically you're buying 1.8 or using it at maximum wide open aperture. And as you can see with the autofocus at my eyes, the lens is plenty sharp. You can see all the separate hairs in my brow and very steep roll off to the blur of the background. Here are how the highlights of the handle, which is very reflective, looks. Here are the highlights of the plastics of the Lego set behind me. And the picture in the window is totally blurred. So 1.8, I see nothing to complain. And as I remember having Nifty 50 AFD version of 1.8, which was like from the late 90s or early 2000s, that was useless at 1.8, and I had to stop it at least to f4 to have sharp images, and that was on 12 megapixel crop sensor camera near D300S. So I'm very happy with this lens, and stopping down doesn't improve much sharpness for my taste, but increases the depth of field. But having the eye focus of the Nikon Z camera, it is not an issue to have a spot-on focus for the eyes. So the conclusion is, as I said in my general review, the lens is super useful starting from the most wide aperture. So the next thing to show is the close-up capabilities and what are you getting. I just took a picture of the ruler. It is a centimeter ruler. They are basically identical. Turned the manual focus and focused all the way in, and then found with the focus peaking at which distance the subject was in focus. It gave me the picture of the size of around 21 centimeters on the widest. So from 4 to 24 is 20. There is almost 1 and a little bit more than half, so 21.5 centimeters on the wide side. So this is the size of the frame you will get if you couldn't all the way in terms of the focus. This is definitely not a macro lens, and even not in the realm of close-up photography. It will allow you to take pictures of something as small as a notebook, for example, or an album. But if you need to take a picture of rain, if you're doing wedding photography, this won't do it, because it won't focus close enough. But for a bouquet, yes, it will do. And this is a good place to show you how it performs in terms of the corner sharpness at the closest with the wide open. So the corners are definitely smudged. And as you can see by the direction of smudging, it is not produced by the shake of my hands, because the smudging is directional towards the outer corners. So here's then diagonally, here's diagonally in the opposite direction. So from the center to the outer edge, from the center to the outer corner. And in the center lens, you see pinpoint sharpness. This could be totally used for taking close-up subjects at wide aperture if the depth of field is wide enough for what you're thinking, but not usable for reproduction work when you need to capture a flat subject, because corners are very weak at this super close distance. Next, I took a picture of subject with very small print to show you the corner performance at not extreme close-up, but something size of the human head, if you consider the top to bottom. And this is just head from the top of the head to the chin, just to show you the corner performance, but have f1.8, f2.8, f4, f5.6, and f11. I didn't consider going much further. At f1.8, 100%, it doesn't look good, to be honest. So in the edge, it is okay, but the corner is very weak. Here I'll put the side by side. 1.8 edge sharpness, usable. Center sharpness, great. You can even resolve the printing dots, which is like, wow, I don't see them with my naked eye, to be honest. But the corner is very weak. And it was also taken with a tripod with leveling, so it is not the issue of alignment. Okay, so corners. The top row is 1.8, 2.8, and 4. The bottom one is 5.6, 8, and 11. What we have, corners are useless. Very smudged at 1.8. This is the size of human head. 2.8 is very weak. And by 4, F4, it's totally usable, I think. But why would you use it for such things? At 5.6, it gets a little bit better, and maybe at f8 still some better in terms of sharpness of the corners is a very minor improvement. And at f11, nothing. In terms of center edge sharpness, we see that it is quite usable at f1.8, so from the wide open, and by f2.8, it's great. And center sharpness, you see from the 1.8 you already resolve this minute detail of the printing dots, and it's totally usable. So what we are left with is the test of focus breathing and the test of the flare. with hood attached and hood detached. So now we will test how lens layers with direct bright object. Flaring without hood.